Battlehosts. Be a better gamer, build a better community.
Welcome to Battlehosts, a podcast website dedicated to helping you become a better 40K gamer and to build a better community of players. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight is Matt.
Hello.
So tonight is, this is part 3 of a 9-part series, a series of podcasts on the new edition of Warhammer 40K. With the release of the new edition, we're doing a bunch of these little special mini episodes, each one covering a new aspect of the new edition. So by the time you get to release date, which is July 25th, we'll have finished all of these mini episodes, and you will be ready for the brand new edition of 40K.
This will be all you need. This is all you need to be ready for the new edition.
Yeah,
Look, nowhere else.
Yeah, you might want to read the book too, but hey, we're trying to cover everything that's different from 8th edition to now.
If you're not paying attention, you might need to read the book, but okay.
Yeah, that too. In this episode, we're going to talk about the new phase of the game, which is the command phase. We'll talk about command points and also the new stratagems in the game that are available to all armies. Now, the command phase isn't super interesting. Basically, I think the reason why they have the command phase is because they had a lot of stuff that was, at the start of your turn or, at the beginning of the movement phase, or they sort of had these things that occurred in sort of this no man's land between phases, and it got kind of confusing. So I think command phase is really just there to provide a cleanup or start of turn phase that that they can key other rules off of. You don't see too many now, obviously, because command phase is new, but I think you'll see in the future things that happen in the command phase. Yeah,
and for those of us that remember 7th edition, hang on, this sounds like a tangent, but stick with me here. Okay, there was like universal special rules, right? Like that we still use today, like deep strike. That's not really a thing in 8th or 9th edition. It's, arrive on the battlefield within, no more than, 9 inches away. I mean, that's, you say that, I say deep strike. In 7th edition, we had barrage and that's been replaced with can fire at an enemy unit without needing line of sight. It's a lot easier to say barrage. So we still say barrage type thing. The command phase, to me, it feels like they're starting to do that again. So instead of saying at the start of the battle round, but before the movement phase begins, they're replacing all that with the command phase. Because the command phase, when you look at the rules that they've released on it, it's not anything shiny or cool or new. It's just putting a name to a certain part of the game. It's a quick part of the game. I'd imagine as we've looked at the mission set that they've released for this, a lot of points are scored in the command phase instead of having this like awkward, like at the start of the turn, but before the movement phase type thing. They're just trying to streamline it out a little bit. So it sounds confusing, but really it's very rudimentary and easy. Yeah.
And basically like you said, the reason they have it is they can key off rules, and the first thing we're seeing is, and we'll have an episode, a future mini episode on the match play missions included with the book, is the scoring happens in the command phase. And so it's good to have it because it's something that occurs before anything else happens, and it's the command phase. And in Sigmar it's called the hero phase, but there's actually things you do in the hero phase. The command phase is really the first thing that happens before anything else happens, and it literally says this, before you do anything else, you earn 1 command point. Every command phase that you roll through, you actually earn 1 CP. Assuming you have a Battleforged army, which for most people, they'll have Battleforged armies. But you actually earn a CP, and then essentially after that, that's really all the command phase is you earn a CP at the start before anything else happens, and then, by the way, this thing exists called the command phase.
Yeah, it's tabulate your points, the points that you've earned from the previous turn, potentially, and get your command point. Now, do we know if we get a command point during the first command phase?
Yeah, I don't know why not. It doesn't say that you can't, so it just says you just get it. So I guess really you start the game with 13, technically.
You effectively start the game with 13.
Minus the ones that you spend for army building, which we talked about in the last mini episode, or any other kind of pregame things you're trying to do. For the most part, you'd start with 13. Thing about it is I know that I'm going to forget all the time. So I'm going to have to force myself that when it's my turn, before I start jumping into movement, command phase, earn a CP, because I mean, even in just playing the game, like testing it out was, just locally being very precautious and taking all the social distancing measures, actually playing with a mask. So we've been able to do that. But I've forgotten multiple times because that's right. I got a CP for this command phase. So something we're going to have to force ourselves to remember.
Yeah. You're just going to have to remind yourself to pick up that little rolly tracker that we got from the Renegade Open a couple years ago.
I love those things.
That we both use for our command point trackers, and just roll it on up one.
Yeah, that thing was awesome. I gotta find out where those guys got that from, because that would be something. That was a cool giveaway.
Apparently, it's a War Machine thing.
Oh.
It's those are all over the place in War Machine. But anyways, we digress.
Yeah, super cool though. So that's the command phase. But then let's talk a little bit about like command points. It says actually, so you skip all the way down to the command point section, and they talk about you cannot gain or refund more than 1 CP per phase. You can't gain or refund off of stratagems that occur before the battle, and the 1 CP that you get each turn is exempt from this rule. You also can't use the same stratagem more than once per phase. So everything that they've kind of FAQ'd is sort of baked into the rules now. And what's interesting is they didn't used to have this. The restriction to, you can only use the same stratagem once per phase was a match play thing. Now it's just everybody. Everyone's operating on the same thing.
Yeah, and they've said that they're going to release a pretty large FAQ document when 9th is released, and I wonder if they're going to FAQ some of the abilities that have gotten around this 1 CP per turn type thing. There is a Harlequin Warlord trait. Like light, something light, player of light or something, and to where when a stratagem is used, you roll a die, and if the die roll matches the number of command points that stratagem was, you get those command points.
Got it.
And they've said that is they've said in FAQs before for 8th that is fine. You can use that for your command points per phase you can regen.
Yeah.
And the other one is the Blackheart Warlord trait. You can get back. You roll a die for each command point spent by your opponent for a stratagem, and on however how many sixes you get when rolling those, you get that many command points of theirs. So I wonder if they're going to errata that and like, no, everybody gets one back and one only type thing. But I think there should still probably be ways to get more than one command point back per phase.
Some of those really, they're not even edge cases. They are rules, but there's some ones that you don't see very often.
Yeah, I mean Trahan with Custodes has an ability like that too. Yeah, you get more than one back. I'm pretty sure. So there's these little edge cases, but for the most part, the rest of us schmucks only get one command point back per phase.
Yeah, and Harlequins kind of need that anyway. I mean, we've been working on a Harlequin script that we'll talk about after, before the edition was announced, we were going to do it, but we'll wait till after, we'll give it some time. But they are, I think, as an army, they're going to routinely drop 6 command points just to get all the traits and relics, because it's that stuff that was in Psychic Awakening is so freaking good that. So certain armies are going to start down 6 command points for army building purposes or pre-game stuff or what have you. So for sure.
Yeah.
So that now you can't use the same command point or the same stratagem once per phase. They have the same 3 core stratagems. What is really interesting, and I searched high and low because I felt weird that it wasn't included. Prepared positions is not here.
Prepared positions is nowhere to be found.
Yeah, which is weird because I feel like that was actually, I didn't think that was a problem. Like, I don't know why they would not have that.
Who knows? I wonder if, there's some, I mean, with the train rules that they've released, I wonder if, the game is going to be, you're going to be a little bit more defensible in your deployment zone now. So it's going to be easier to hide. So prepared positions would maybe become an issue.
Yeah.
It maybe be too good.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're waiting to see if they need to add that one back in, or maybe there's some game mechanics that, innately make that they've added into 9th that innately make, prepared positions not nearly as useful. Because remember, prepared positions was not in the original 8th edition book.
No,
it was added in, and then in one of the FAQs or the big FAQs, because this game was too darn deadly.
Yeah.
I mean, there was an alpha strike game there for a long time of if you go first, you have a much better chance of winning type thing. So who knows? They might be waiting and seeing to add that bad boy back in.
Yeah, I mean, they could easily do it. It's not like it's people are still used to it. It's not like a brand new rule, but so they kept the command reroll, and it's limited now. So it's limited to certain things: number of attacks, hit, wound, damage roll, saving throw, advance roll, charge roll, psychic test, or deny the witch. And then, by the way, as we covered in the very first mini episode, if you're using a command reroll on a charge or psychic test or deny the witch, anything that has 2d6, you're rolling both dice. So just to get around that. So there's no more, I rolled like a charge, I rolled a 6 and a 1, I'm just going to reroll this one. You got to roll both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I think throughout this entire edition, no matter what stratagems have come out, I would argue that the command reroll is still the most powerful stratagem in the entire game because of its versatility of like basically getting to reroll like anything, you know? Yeah. So some of the stuff that was able to be rerolled with a command reroll was just downright silly sometimes. I mean, when the Gene Stealer cult, I forget the name of that psychic power that had to be nerfed pretty quickly after it was released.
The hypnosis or the mind control or the
one that could one-shot a knight when it first came out.
Oh, yeah. The leadership one, yeah.
It was a leadership roll-off, and it was pretty silly because you could, when it first came out, you could reduce the leadership of a target by like 5 or 6 as a Gene Stealer cult, and then you'd have this psychic power where you'd have like you'd roll off against your opponent, and as long as the Gene Stealer cult player won, that target would take a mortal wound and a mortal wound and a mortal wound. And it was so silly that, knights were being one shot, with one psychic power.
Yep.
And even if you did somehow find a way to get out of it, the Gene Stealer cult player would be able to re-roll that leadership roll. And it was just, I don't think it was meant for this. I think I had some certain things in mind with this command re-roll. So it's great to see that they're really, narrowing down what can be used for a command reroll.
Well, just think like Gilliman, his reroll to get back up. You can't reroll that. There's a lot of things that go off on a 4-up. So, for example, Knights, they have a strat where they shut a psychic power down on a 4-up. You can't reroll that. Celestine, you can't reroll that. Serpent Shields, which I don't know how many times I've rolled a 1 to fire off that thing. Can't reroll that. I mean, there's a lot. It's a lot that's being limited now.
Yeah, those psychic deny stratagems are really powerful, and they say, on a 4-up you deny the psychic power, and in reality, you'd look at that and say, it's a 50% chance to go off, but the rest of us know, like, no, it's a 75% chance to go off, because if you are already spending a CP or 2, I think Iron Hands have to pay 2 for that.
Yep.
If you're paying a CP or 2 to deny somebody's psychic power, you are going to, if it fails, you're going to invest another CP to re-roll that bad boy. So it's effectively a 75% chance, which it is what it is. But I feel it's a good change.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And it's more limited. So I'm not entirely sure what I would use the command reroll for. Damage rolls are always kind of the ones that I kind of like to save them for. Rolling the 1 on damage is always a bummer if it's a D6 damage weapon, although I try to avoid D6 damage weapons anyways. But saving throws, obviously, I think the charge or psychic test or deny the witch, those kinds of things, because you have to reroll both, I just don't know if I would reroll.
Well, do you really worry about the psychic test? Because we play with Farseers, and Farseers don't care about that.
Well, you care about them for Warlocks. And those guys suck. They just do. Anyways, so that's command reroll. It's a big difference now. Counteroffensive is basically the interrupt stratagem. Sometimes these names, it's funny you read them, you're like, oh, that's right, that's what it was called. So it's interrupt the fight phase, which is no different than it was before.
If you get down to the brass tacks, it's a little bit different. So if you remember in 8th, the way that counteroffensive was worded is that after the enemy has chosen the first unit to fight, then you can choose to interrupt, to use counteroffensive. And that was the only time you could really interrupt.
That's a good point.
Now this one is quite a bit more flexible. So
Mm.
yeah, you have to wait for the opponent, for a time after your opponent has fought, to go. But it's more versatility. It's a little bit better. It's subtle, but it's a little bit better.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because now it says use a stratagem after an enemy unit has fought. That's all it says. It doesn't say the first unit. Doesn't say anything. It's just after a unit has fought.
Yep. So you can instead of immediately having to fight after your opponent has fought with their first charged unit, you could choose to fight after he's fought with the second, or she has fought with the second charged unit before the third charged unit has. It's nitpicking, but it's a little bit better.
You're right. Yeah. And Insane Bravery is now different too. It's still 2 CP. Stratagem before you take a morale test, the test is automatically passed. You don't roll any dice. So before you take the test, it's automatically passed, which is the same. But you can only use a stratagem once per battle. I don't remember that restriction being there.
No, it wasn't. And oh man, the hits keep coming for Horde players.
Yeah.
The hits keep coming because this is designed for Horde players right here. There have been, we'll highlight throughout these 9 episodes that Horde players took a very large hit in this edition.
Yeah.
And I get why. I don't know what your feelings on it are, Mark, the hits that Hordes have taken.
Yeah, this is for sure, because it used to be that if you had enough CP every turn, you could keep a unit alive, whether it was a unit of guardsmen that was down to that lost a bunch, or a bunch of orcs. I will say, we'll talk about the morale phase in a later mini episode, but the morale phase is slightly different, and you actually, I think, for some large units, they would lose less models than in the previous, in certain circumstances. So you're probably not seeing a crazy amount of models run away. It's just different. I think a lot of times you're going to use this for some of those really big units of elite units. So if like Wraith Blades, if I took 10-man Wraith Blades and I've taken, let's say I lost 5 of them, there's no way I'm going to try for a morale test on those guys, because they're way too expensive. So I did think you're using it in different circumstances now.
Well, I would argue that you would use this for a very large unit, because let's say you have a unit of 30 conscripts. I know it's a terrible example because they'll have a commissar near them and stuff. But if you have a unit of 30 conscripts, and you lose like 6 of them, you're gonna automatically fail that morale test unless you magically can roll a 1.
Yep.
And you'll fail that morale test, and you'll lose 1 automatically.
Yep.
But then you have to roll 23.
Yeah, that's fair.
You'll have to roll 23 dice, and however many ones you. Yeah, I don't want to get too far into the morale phase, but your likelihood of losing models, increases exponentially.
Yeah.
The more models you have in the unit. So I can see this being used for very large units for those that are still taking them in 9th edition.
Yeah, I think as we talked about, that they're trying to define these things now, and engagement range was something that they have clearly defined, kind of like command phase. To me, the hits for melee, like large melee units like Orc Boys or Gene Stealers, that half-inch engagement, that half inch behind a half inch is really a killer. that one I think is. But you're right. I think this for sure is another slight nerf to large units, and I just don't think they want large units in the game. I just don't think they want that.
No, and I get why. I heard somebody else say somewhere that it appears the objective of 9th edition is to remove as many feel bads as they can from the game, and I completely see why they would want to do that. It just makes it more enjoyable for everyone. In 7th edition, you only had to play a Screamer Star with a 2-up rerollable invul once to go. That is not fun. Yeah. I do not play against that. That is, if it comes between, me playing this guy playing a 2-up rerollable invul Screamer Star, or me getting an extra 2.5 hours for my lunch, I'm going to take the extra 2.5 hour type thing because I will not be banging my head up against a brick wall.
Yeah.
Especially if it goes first. So I'm removing, we don't have too much problems with it because we play with chess clocks.
Yep.
But not everybody plays with chess clocks. We play with DGT chess clocks, by the way.
For sure.
And we don't have too big of an issue with it, but I could see how many people would cite this as something that is not fun for them in the game.
Yeah. So speaking of removing unfun things, Desperate Breakout. For 2CP, you use it in the movement phase. You select a unit from your army that has not been selected to move, and which is in engagement range with at least one enemy unit. You roll 1d6 for each model in that unit. For each result of one model in that unit is destroyed. Assuming the unit was not destroyed, it can now attempt to fall back, and when doing so, its models can be moved across enemy models as if they were not there. Any model in the unit that ends its fallback move within an engagement range is destroyed. So basically, regardless, your unit's going to get out, because let's say you only have 6-inch movement. You're moving through models. Let's say you don't make it past the engagement range on one model. Well, that model is just automatically destroyed. So assuming it's not destroyed, it can't do anything else. It can't cast psychic power. It can't shoot. It can't declare a charge. It can't be selected to fight. Even it has a rule that would allow it to do after falling back. Desperate Breakout is a way to remove, for 2CP, to get out of the wrap and trap, or the hostage taking, or tri-pointing, or whatever you want to call it. So this is definitely geared toward removing that, because, I mean, it's difficult to describe to somebody who doesn't understand the wrap and trap technique. If they don't get it and you're pulling it on them, it's just hard to sit down and understand and describe to them exactly what just happened. Because then they realize, they go, oh, I can't fall back. Oh, well, no, I can't shoot you. Oh, no. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, the game's over.
That's great. That's wonderful. And the first time it's pulled on you, you're just like, what do you mean my little ranger unit is now just a little anchor for your gene stealers? And then, I thought I was kind of like, trying to clear some board space or whatever. Those guys were hidden, but now it just turns out they were a little life raft to hang on to for a turn, and then they come back, to avoid getting shot. So I think that the wrap and trap, or whatever you want to call it, that is, I don't know that they intended the last edition. I don't think they intended the rules to work that way. I think it was one of those things that was just sort of an oversight, and then they just kind of went with it because I'm like, well, that is what the rules say.
In this edition, so far, what we've taken from the rules that they've given us is they've given assault armies, things with one hand, and kind of taken some things with another. Smaller board size, definitely a positive for assault armies. Better terrain rules, definitely a better thing for assault armies. The reserve rules that we're going to get into, those are definitely great for assault armies. But then there's things like this that kind of take away one of their tried and true things. But let's be honest, wrap and trap was something that they had to do to be able to survive, to get to where they needed to go. So hopefully they won't need it as much. It's still possible to wrap and trap things. You just have to do two of those things. And it would behoove me to not mention that nowhere in this stratagem does it specify what unit can do a desperate breakout. It's a vehicle, it's a bike, it's infantry, it's a beast, a swarm. They can all do a desperate breakout. So the days of wrapping and trapping, they're still with us. I mean, there's still going to be stuff that can keep us in combat. The the White Scar's bike captain with the master of snares, that can stop things from falling back. The contorted epitome, the mirror, is going to be everywhere.
Be ready for such a jerk.
be ready for that, everyone. That the contorted epitome is going to be everywhere, because that thing prevents units from falling back. There's still going to be ways to keep people locked in combat, and I feel that's going to be even more valuable in this edition, to keep them in combat with the stratagem, available.
Yeah, and I guess what that means is if you have units kind of pushed out, like infantry, let's say you're running guard and you have some infantry units pushed out, and your opponent has a fast melee unit, they may not be able to wrap and trap, but if they can do that to 2 units, which for some larger units they might be able to, you can only do this with 1. So you definitely want to make sure you've got space between units so you don't get stuck. This is kind of, to me, it literally says Desperate Breakout. I don't think you want to rely on this. It is 2CP after all, so it's not cheap. It's expensive to do it, and it's almost like, okay, I'm going to get myself out of this jam, but it feels like something you shouldn't have to do if you're playing by the rules you learned last edition. This is kind of one of those things like, okay, well, I'm allowed to do this one thing, but I shouldn't just rely on it.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, it's not something to bank on. Because there might be strategies that develop around this to where people put units in such a way coherency wise to where you can try to desperately break out, but if you cannot move, far enough away from that unit, that unit that you just spent 2 CP on is destroyed. They're gone.
Exactly. Yeah.
So be very careful. This is not kind of the golden ticket that it appears.
Yeah. And we should talk about fallback rules too, just because Desperate Breakout allows you to move through models, but fallback in general is basically the same. You move your movement value, and if you fall back, you can't shoot or charge or manifest a psychic power. Only Titanic units can shoot or manifest a power, which is odd, but I'm trying to think of a psychic unit that is Titanic. Well, you know what? There may be one in the game that eventually is just, I can't think of any. But if you have the fly keyword, you don't get to fall back and shoot, which is kind of important.
Unless you're Ultramarines.
Okay. Certain armies have rules. Yes, unless you're Ultramarines, which actually that makes me think Ultramarines are going to be they could be really good in this next edition.
They could be good.
Yep, because that's pretty good. But yeah, think about like Tau. But then again, so Riptides can just shoot in combat anyway because they are monsters. So maybe just take it away. There's another stratagem called Cut Them Down. So it's 1 CP when an enemy unit falls back. Each model in engagement range, each model that you have in engagement range, or each model they have that's in engagement range, that falls back on a 6, it's a mortal wound. This is we
need to keep in mind that engagement range has been effectively reduced by 50%.
Yep. Yeah.
It's been cut in half. So the amount of models that you're going to be able to roll, a D6 on, you're maybe going to get 1 or 2 mortal wounds out of 1 CP. It's kind of the trade-off kind of thing, but
for sure.
To each their own.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's worth a punt if you've got the CP, but it'd have to be kind of an interesting circumstance to do that. Emergency disembarkation. When a transport model is destroyed, all units that are embarked within the model can be set up wholly within 6 inches rather than the normal 3. The units are not affected by the destroyed model's explodes ability, which is kind of interesting. You must roll 1d6 for each model that you just set up in the battlefield. Instead of one model that disembarked being destroyed, for each roll of 1, one model that disembarked is destroyed on a roll of 1 or 2. Units cannot declare a charge or perform a heroic intervention in the same turn they disembarked from a destroyed transport.
I'm wondering where this one was in 8th edition, because that was a common tactic in 7th edition where when Battle Company was all the rage, you would just surround a rhino when you blew it up, and hey, your entire dev squad was dead.
Yeah.
And in 8th edition, doesn't quite work that way because you can hop over models in that one. So I'm curious what the idea behind this one was. Maybe to stop kind of a wrap type thing on transports that could kill models.
But 3 inches, I mean, you have to be 3 inches. I don't know. I feel like it's rare that has happened to me, because that unit that is wrapped, that transport has to be huge to ensure that you can't place a model within 3 inches outside of it. Because 3 inches is actually, pretty good. So I guess this just prevents that from happening, just period, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And we'll see if it gets used at all. Yep. But the next one lit the world on fire when it was previewed.
Yeah, everyone got excited about this one, and then they kind of clarified that there's certain armies that they don't worry about this at all. So, Fire Overwatch. Use a stratagem after an enemy unit is declared a charge, and one of the units that was chosen as the target of the charge can fire Overwatch before the charge roll is made, so 1 CP. So no longer is Overwatch something that you do automatically. You actually have to spend a CP to Overwatch.
Yeah, and remember when you said that assault armies were given certain things that they were very excited about? Well, this has to be towards the top of the list here.
I agree.
Yeah.
And you know why they did this? It's just because rolling Overwatch is annoying. It's like you're rolling a bunch of dice for nothing to happen. So you charge a guard unit and they go, okay, Overwatch. So it's almost like most of the time you're rolling a bunch of dice for sixes that you don't get them. Oh, I caused 2 wounds. Oh, I saved him. You're spending way too much time on useless dice rolling. And I feel like they're trying to get away from rolling dice just to roll dice. So
yeah. And then there's some Overwatch attacks that are just absolutely ridiculous. Man, I forget the name of it. It's the Chaos Flamer. It's like strength 5, neg 1, but it's 2 damage. And they have 2 of those suckers. And we all know flamers automatically hit.
Yep.
So you just couldn't get in if you had to weather more than one of those, or the barrage of one of those. The things aren't getting into whatever is flaming them. So this is a really positive one. I mean, there was also things that just did not work well. The things that boosted Overwatch so well for some armies that it just is this really fair and fun? I'm thinking of like Space Marine Chapter Masters that let units re-roll, everything, all misses.
Yeah.
And so like double Storm Cannon, Leviathan, Dreadnoughts were overwatching you and hitting you on 5s because they had a stratagem for that. Of course, Iron Hands did. And then they had a Chapter Master near them that let them re-roll all the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. And so by the end of it, you were getting, a good 7 or 8 Storm Cannon shots in the face when you're trying to charge them and lock them down a little bit. It's just not fun.
Yeah. I mean you can still do it, but you got to spend a CP on it. I'm thinking like the night I took a night with the Avenger Gatling Cannon, and usually the one I swapped for that had Endless Fury, where 6s explode. I would probably Overwatch with that every time just because it's good. It's worthwhile because your 6s are hitting and exploding an additional hit. So there's a lot of really nasty shooting things that do well with Overwatch, but there's so many that just don't do. And you're like, there's times when I'm just like, oh, all right, darn it. Okay, let me roll my Overwatch real quick, knowing I wouldn't do anything, but it was part of the rules. So
yeah, and I know we're all thinking like, oh boy, this will totally cut down the hour and a half that is the Tau Overwatch. But wait, there's more.
Yep. So just a handful of days after this came out, and everybody already made the memes saying that Tau, were getting pushed aside. They basically said, oh, by the way, Tau have been FAQ'd. They will allow Overwatch without using CP. So Tau are unaffected, which, I mean, they kind of need to be. It is their shtick, right? They shoot. So I would rather see Tau, I don't know, as a mechanical, the mechanics of that army probably do need a little bit of help. I'd rather see them get like jump, shoot, jump rather than Overwatch, honestly. To me, I think it'd be a better play experience, but it is what it is. That's right now, Tau are the shooting and they can Overwatch.
Well, it's just so silly that every Tau army you see, you don't really have to ask what sept it is. It's all Tau sept because Tau sept, that for the greater good, triggers on 5s instead of 6s.
Yep.
And every single sept is that, except for maybe like a random, like Vanguard detachment, or what was formerly known as like a Supreme Command detachment.
Yeah.
With
like
with
Borkan or something that
with Borkan for extended range marker lights, or Sakea sept for their one stratagem. So hopefully this expands the builds. I mean, Tau still got hit. Their Riptides can't leave combat and shoot, anymore. Though there are things like that. Their characters are way more vulnerable now to being sniped out because they can't just kind of hide behind a wall of drones. Some of those drones, at least 3 of those drones, have to kind of stick near them. Though Tau got hit a little bit, but it's a little bit head scratching that they get a little bit of special treatment with this. I'm hoping other armies get special rules that are specifically special to them. You know?
I mean, I could see them taking certain units and giving them the Overwatch for free. Like now, this is something they can give out as a bonus to certain units because it's not automatic now. So I could see that. All right. So that's it for the new stratagems. So I think that the biggest one, we talked about was Overwatch is now a CP strat, and then also just no more wrap and trap, and then the command reroll. It's way limited now, so it's not something you can just roll all the time. And the more I start to think about all the reasons, all the ways that I've rolled a single dice for whatever, a lot of that's cut down. So it's going to be more interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot better start than we got last edition with 8th, because remember at the start of 8th for like 6 months.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
I can reroll the C's.
Yeah, you and I, rerolling the C's was always fun, but we had 3 warlord traits to choose from. Unless you had a book out, you only had 3 warlord traits to choose from, and you had 3 stratagems to choose from to spend all your CP on. You got 3 stratagems, so they're giving us a lot better variety of things to choose from this time around. So that's nice.
For sure. All right, let's take a break and let's hear a word from our sponsor, TraderAid.com. If you're like most Warhammer players, you own a ton of models. At one time, you had big plans for these models, but now they just kind of sit, gathering dust, unused and unloved. It's time to clean out your closet of shame. Visit TraderA.com and get cash for your used models. TraderA is run by Captain A, someone who's been in the community a long time and has done a lot to grow the hobby. He's also a personal friend of the show. Unopened boxes, models on a sprue, half-built models, primed, painted, even bits have value. The process is simple. Send him a list of what you have, he'll send you a quote, you pack it up, send in your stuff, and he'll get you cash. You can shop around, but you're going to find that TraderA gives you 40% more than the other guys. You want it quick, you want to get rid of it, visit TraderA.com. Get cash to buy the stuff that you really want. TraderA.com. Sell your models and get your cash quick and easy. All right, and we're back. So, we talked a little bit about assault armies. You think it's just kind of a net neutral here? I mean, the Overwatch is a CP strat, but people that have units that are good in Overwatch are probably still going to spend a CP to do it. They can't wrap and trap anymore. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's definitely going to shake up the way assault armies play, because in the highlights of stratagems right there, we just highlighted one that really benefits assault armies and one that really hinders most assault armies, because again, there's still witch cults that Drukhari witch cults that can stop units from falling back with their shard nets and their general no escape rule. There's still the White Scars,
the
fight
snare,
captain, the master of snares. There's still ways of stopping things from falling back, but those examples are pretty few and far between. And in order to wrap and trap things, you're going to have to be really, really smart, and it's almost going to have to be like pulling off like the perfect 10 chance number to do it. But it's a give and a take there. It's gonna be interesting to see how this all plays out when the edition drops.
Yeah, I wonder if, because we talked about Horde armies being kind of getting some hits here. One of the ones we talked about today was the insane bravery. The morale test is only once per battle, but the engagement range is another. We'll talk about blast weapons, in a future mini episode. There's a lot of things that kind of impacted unit sizes. We've talked about the fact that, you might consider taking smaller units than before, because there's lots of disadvantages for larger units now. And a lot of the really scary assault units were large units like Orc Boys or Gene Stealers or, even Shining Spears. Usually you ran 9, or you can run 9, right? Yeah. So those larger units, I wonder if assault's going to be more of a smaller units that aren't just devastating, that do a massive thing, but they're sort of part of an overall strategy. I mean, I'd like to think that it's not dead. It's just kind of just shifted a little bit. As it's not an all or nothing kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, and keep in mind that this Overwatch stratagem can only be used once. So like you said, Mark, the smaller close combat units are probably going to be more of a thing, because that one unit might have been overwatched into oblivion, but that second one is free and clear to charge.
Yeah.
Without suffering overwatch, because there's no more unlimited overwatch in this edition. Yeah,
that's a very good point, because now, I mean, Tau, whatever. That's part of the rule, but you're right. Because you can only use the stratagem once per phase like you could before, you do this once. And so unless you're Tau, let me think here. So obviously if you're in engagement range, you can't do it. So you have to kind of be very careful about this. So you don't necessarily, because if a unit gets in within engagement range, and then the rest of them can charge in. Spending a CP, it's kind of it can be dicey, I think, and having multiple units that can assault you, they're in assault range or can assault you, kind of provides a lot of choices that you have to make. Okay, which one do I Overwatch?
Yeah, and there's still ways that assault armies can force their opponents to make bad decisions. I mean, you might have like a unit of like 10 bloodletters that are 9 inches away and are charging your Leviathan Dreadnought, and that's the first unit they choose to charge with. But there's another unit of bloodletters that's 3 inches away, and we don't know if that unit that unit that's 9 inches away is going to get in. But do you waste that Overwatch and that CP on that unit that's 9 inches away? So there's going to be ways of forcing your opponent to make tough or impossible decisions.
Yeah.
To kind of get some of that advantage back. But it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, get him to tease out to get him to use that CP, to commit that CP, because if they shoot, if they shoot the wrong thing or they kill another unit, but a second unit goes in, then they're still getting charged and they're down a CP. So
that is what we call Barney Rubble Trouble right there.
For sure. All right. Well, that's all we have for the command phase and some of the new stratagems. Thanks you so much for listening to our show. We love to hear from our listeners, so please feel free to message us on Facebook or email us at thebattlehosts@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us, you can help us in a few different ways. You can tell your friends about us. You can like us on Facebook. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can leave a review on iTunes, which does help to boost our listening audience. Finally, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thebattlehosts. For as little as $1 a month, you can help us with the cost of running the show and staying engaged with the 40K community. So thanks for listening to Battlehost.
Remember to be a better gamer
and build a better community. Good night.